HR expert, human resource expert that we've known for many years. Carmen, how are you?
Great. Thank you, Javier. Thank you so much for having me with you today and to speak.
Yeah, we're excited about today's theme. We're going to talk about many different topics that our clients have been asked about how to handle this pandemic, furloughs, layoffs, salary reductions, re-entering into the system. Carmen Torres has been one of our consultants for many, many years. She's a personal friend of mine, great professional, and we're just so thankful to have you on board and to kind of guide us through this, new phase and just bring us, our clientele up to speed and our partners to what they can expect. So Carmen, I want to hand the baton off to you. I want to thank you again for sharing your valuable information with us and with our clients and our partners.
Thank you so much, Javier. So I'm going to share my screen with everyone. And then what will happen is that Saida will remove the video portion so that you can actually view just the screen only. And Saida, you can go ahead and review the video portion on your end if you can. Great. All right, wonderful. Well, thanks so much, everyone. And I'm happy to provide this information for you. First of all, good afternoon. And yeah, I'd like to also just, start off with a brief disclaimer. As you are aware, there have been the laws that have just been changing constantly regarding COVID-19. So I just want you to keep in mind that there may be some new or additional information that has not been referenced, that will not be referenced in today's webinar. So just consult with your legal counsel or an HR specialist for guidance prior to implementing any of the options that we'll be reviewing today. And with that, I'd like to just, share, while state, county, and city stay-at-home orders do allow essential businesses to continue to operate and others to work from home, there are many businesses that must respond to immediate and sharp decrease in revenue. That's one of the reasons for our webinar today, right? So especially employers in California that are dealing with this economic impact, you must definitely take things into consideration to minimize the risk of liability before you start making any changes. And I don't know if you guys are aware, but just as of a few days ago, April 23rd or last week, roughly 26 million people filed for new unemployment claims. That's an incredible number, in a 5-week period. And a lot of the reasons why employers are considering some of the things that we're going to talk about today is because maybe they have not yet qualified for the PPP or SBA loan. So we'll be going over what some of your options may be if you are not financially able to sustain your current workforce. So some of the options that California employers have for reducing labor costs do include layoffs, furloughs, and reducing compensation. Keep in mind, though, that the decision that you make may bring on an adverse employment action, meaning that employees can still claim for discrimination. It just depends on how you make that selection. So even though your reason for the action is obvious, the current pandemic, right, and the economic impact it has on your business, however, the reason or the way that you select the individuals that you're going to lay off or furlough is not as clear. And that's where you want to make sure that, or it's also one of the reasons why you may want to consult with an HR specialist or an attorney. We'll be able to help you to determine what is the best way to make the necessary choices and how do you deliver and communicate that message to your team. That's just as important. So employers should rely on legitimate and non-discriminatory and well-documented reasons for selecting the employees that are subject to a layoff or a furlough or a compensation reduction. Some of the things that you want to consider, are like job classification and how long they've been employed with you. These are definitely valid reasons for a layoff or a furlough. And you want to kind of stay away from, reasons that are related to performance or other subjective reasons. And while it may be very, very tempting, this is not an opportunity to get rid of the bad apples, right? Um, so do not use performance issues as a basis for who stays and who goes. And even with this pandemic, I want you to know that there are ways to let go of workers who aren't performing, but that's another webinar or a conversation that we can have offline. Okay, so the first option that you have is a layoff. So a layoff is actually very similar to a termination. It's a termination of employment. It's very straightforward, and but it's without cause. And typically what that means is that when it's without cause, like for a reason, let's say a conduct, for conduct or something like that, or performance, then it would actually allow them to qualify for unemployment benefits. So you should consider also, that when you do a layoff, you should consider that you'll have to pay out all the hours that they've worked. You'll need to pay out vacation and commissions if there are any available. And you'll also want to let your employees know how long their medical benefits will last, if they do have medical benefits through you. And then again, like I mentioned, they do qualify for unemployment. So another option then would be furlough. And a furlough is similar to an unpaid leave of absence, okay? Furloughed employees retain their jobs but cease working for their employers for a period of time. So furloughed employees in California are eligible to receive unemployment insurance benefits. And they should be communicated to employees in writing, just as a layoff would, before, but in this case, it's really before the start of the furlough period. And we'll go over some of those options towards the end. So federal regulations require that employers pay an exempt employee that is performing any work during the course of a week their full weekly salary if they do not work the full week. And typically it's because the employer does not have the work available for them, which is the reason why you would need to pay them the full week. However, with the layoff, you may reduce the pay in full day increments on the last pay week if that's necessary. What I'm finding is that some employers, even if they have to lay someone off and it's the middle of the pay period, they're just, showing just a small gesture of generosity and paying their employees through the end of a particular pay period. So that is definitely one option that you can take, but it's not necessary if you are not able to, okay? And no matter what, regardless of which option you choose, but particularly with a furlough, remember to check with your healthcare plans to determine coverage. Because employees are eligible to remain on company sponsored plans, and you may request their portion of the monthly premium. Again, some employees are allowing employees to repay upon their return to work, but what if they don't return, right? What happens in that case? Well, in many cases, you may not be able to collect. If they do return, then you are able to have a payment plan with them and ask them to pay according to their pay schedules. And so it could be $50 per pay period, or again, it's an arrangement that you would make directly with them. And let me see, just make sure that we didn't miss anything else. So remember that a furlough is a temporary leave with the intention of bringing back your employees to work. So if you have no intention of bringing back your employees to work, I would definitely suggest that you opt for the layoff option. And again, this is something that either a specialist or an attorney would be able to help you make what is the best decision for your place of employment, right? And it also means that they can be employed. So whether you lay them off 100% or it could be a partial furlough, which means that they would just be working reduced days and hours, okay? The one difference between the layoff and the furlough also is that vacation does not need to be paid out when you furlough. And then they also do qualify for unemployment. So that's a really great option if you do plan on returning your employees to the workforce. know there will be a lot of questions, so we'll have some time at the end. We're definitely allowing some time to go over that, and feel free to ask any questions or clarifications around this. So the third option is the compensation reduction, right? So the compensation reduction, an employer may decrease the labor costs, and compensation cuts must be announced, however, in writing before the start of the work covered by the new pay rate, and preferably in advance of the start of the pay period in which the cut will be effective. The reason why this is important is that this avoids deducting from an exempt employee's salary and avoids overtime calculations with two different rates for non-exempt employees. So for example, if you have an employee who is non-exempt, which is an hourly employee, and you change their status or their compensation rate in the middle of a pay period, you may have a compensation amount or hours. Let's say you might have 28 hours at the rate of let's just say at the rate of $20 per hour. And if you are changing them, let's say to $15 per hour, then you would have the balance of their pay period paid at a different rate. So we want to avoid that. Not only that, but it also makes a difference when paying overtime. And you want this notice to be a written notice. And again, preferably just a memo that's individually addressed to each employee. Some companies have opted for a notice that just goes to all staff, but I think it's important to personalize it and include their full name, even their position title if you can. And it just seems a little bit more, it's warmer to receive a personalized memo, even if it's to reduce the compensation. And then this should also include the reason for the reduction in compensation and when the cut in compensation is taking place and what type of pay is being cut, because you might just want to change, and you might not be able to change their compensation rate, but you may just be changing their opportunity to receive commission, for example, or an incentive plan that you might have. So you could change that as well, okay? And again, just to avoid creating a contractual obligation, make no verbal promises regarding when a compensation increase will take place. And to not reduce the compensation for any exempt or salaried employee below the minimum salary level threshold for an exemption person. So instead, I would recommend that you consider reclassifying the employee from exempt to non-exempt. And this would actually require you to ask them to keep timekeeping, a timesheet, for example, or to clock in and clock out, or to use the various online systems that are available right now. You would also need to compensate them for overtime work that they may work over 8 hours in a day. And then remember to provide them meal and rest breaks as well. So I wanted to just briefly go over, the salaried exempt. So if you do have exempt employees in California, and these are employees who are not eligible for overtime pay and who do not have to keep track of their time, nor are they required to take breaks and meal periods. Nor are you able to deduct, from their salary for any time that they don't work, unless it's a full day and they don't have vacation or PTO or sick time available to them. But the minimum exempt rate right now in California is $54,080 for any company who has 26 or more employees. Okay, so that's very important. And again, if you currently have exempt employees and they're not at these minimum rates, that's definitely something that you should review and reconsider at this time and make the necessary changes. And then if you are a company that has 25 or less employees, then the minimum exempt rate is $49,920. So the one thing to remember, regardless of which option you choose, well, actually, this is mostly for layoffs. However, it could impact a furlough if your furlough lasts for longer than, let's say, 30 days. But let's focus on the layoff. A layoff that has where you have to lay off more than 50 employees within a 30-day period requires you to actually provide a 60-day notice to your employees. Now, this is called the Worker Adjustment and Retraining Notification Act. While it does require to provide this advance notice, and currently the governor has actually signed an executive order which temporarily suspended that 60-day requirement. However, you must still submit notices to EDD, and that is something that's very critical to ensure that you are able to minimize your risk of liability in case an employee claims that they were not provided the proper notification of this layoff. And so again, this is for companies who have 75 or more full-time and part-time employees who've worked at least 6 months prior to the action, okay? And this is a lot of information, and if you'd like, we can definitely send you some details about that. Just ask Javier or Saida, and I'd be happy to provide some more details and some links that will give you more information on this topic. So when you are doing a layoff or a furlough, it is very important that you actually provide them a change in status notice. Everything should be in writing, right? What are the 3 rules in HR? Document, document, document. And if you've heard me speak before, you've heard me say that plenty of times. It is very, very critical. So whether it's a layoff or a furlough, a written notice identifying the type of separation is definitely required. I would definitely include their full name, and make sure you include their full legal name. This is important. Many times, our payroll records might have a middle name that's added to it, where our, on a general basis, we call someone by a nickname. So be sure to use their legal name, the position that you're laying them off from, or the title that they have, the last day of work. Remember that sometimes when you lay off someone or you furlough someone, some companies like to give them, a 1-week notice. So if the notice is given today and the layoff or the furlough will take place next Friday, then you want to go ahead and make note of both of those dates as well, the notice date and the last day of work. And then a return to work date, if that is applicable, particularly with a furlough. You may not know if they're going to be returning to work yet. So if you don't know that, that is definitely okay. And what you can do is you can actually just add an extra comment in that notice that says, we will continue to review our business needs and assess the needs to determine if and when a return to work date becomes available. So again, you're not promising anyone when they will return to work, because that might be a contractual agreement that you are making verbally without meaning. And sometimes it's really tough. We know that employees are struggling right now, and the last thing they're looking forward to is being laid off or reducing their hours. So while that is critical, it's also very important that we remain sensitive but not make any promises that we would not be able to later provide and meet, okay? And then the last thing you want to add into this notice is the reason for change. And again, that's going to be either a layoff, furlough, and I would definitely include, make this very clear, that as a result of COVID-19, that's going to be very critical for a couple of reasons, right? One of them is for you, in case you are, or in case, actually more than anything, it's for them, so that they would actually be able to qualify for unemployment benefits. So remember to inform them about their benefits. When do they end? If it's a layoff, most of the benefits typically end on the last day of the month of the current uh, month that they are being laid off. So for example, today is April 30th, and if you were laying them off today, unfortunately, today would actually be their last day of coverage for medical benefits, if that is what you selected. Now, if you were laying them off tomorrow, which is May 1st, then their last day of medical benefits would actually be May 31st. So that is something else that a lot of employers are taking into consideration, end dates, to try to be generous and try to allow an employee to be able to hold on to their medical coverage for as long as possible. So again, in this case, it's really up to you. Now, if you did need to lay them off today, April 30th, and knowing that benefits end today, you do have the option as an employer to pay for the benefits for them through May. So that can be a generous gift that you are making to them, and say, while your last day of employment is April 30th, your medical benefits will be in effect through May 31st. And you also want to provide them with COBRA information, or let them know that your third-party administrator will be providing them with that information within 30 days. That way they know what they're eligible for, and whether or not they're going to be able to keep the continued coverage beyond the date that you end their premiums, okay, or that you end their benefits. And then also, if they are going on furlough, you may want to let them know if they are responsible for premiums. What premiums are they responsible for? Or are you going to allow them to, do they get to pay for premiums while they're on this furlough? Or will you allow them to repay those premiums once they are brought back from the furlough? So, you will need to make that decision and then let them know what they may be responsible for. The other thing that you want to provide to them, particularly with the layoff, is the unemployment insurance booklet. This is the California's for Your Benefit pamphlet. The reference number is listed there for you to have access to, and I definitely advise you to download that booklet. If you're not able to find it, just let us know and we'd be happy to send it over to you. We'll be sure to take care of that for you. And then final check. That is definitely critical when it comes to a layoff. Remember that I talked to you in the beginning about layoff being very similar to a termination of employment. As with any termination of employment, if you are planning to terminate or lay someone off, you must provide them their final check and vacation and any commissions that are due to them on their last day of employment. So again, if you notify them tomorrow that next week is their final day, then on their final day, you want to provide that information. If you notify them today that today is their last day of employment, then you want to make sure to have that final paycheck along with that written notice to them and the booklet that I mentioned a moment ago. Those are very, very critical pieces of information that is required in order for you to be compliant, okay? So I want to touch briefly on this because I know that this is a topic that has come up, and although we don't have a lot of information right now, but it is something that's critical. So the first thing to do when employees do not want to work, first we ask ourselves, okay, what are some of the reasons? Why do they not want to work, right? So you want to be open to their concerns. That's the first thing. And you can ask them why, what is the reason that you do not want to come to work? What are your concerns, or, what is it that you're considering? And no matter what decision you make, and I encourage you to not make a decision in that very moment, but rather to review some of the policies that are currently in place. So reference the current COVID-19 policies and your handbook policies. I know that there's been a lot of information going that has been going out since the beginning of the month regarding the emergency sick time rules, the paid sick time rules, the new rules that just came out April 1st, as well as the emergency FMLA policies that just came out. And I won't go over all of those details because I know that Javier did have another session on this. However, there are some very specific reasons why an employee would not want to come to work, and you need to determine whether or not they qualify under those items. And it could be for whether they have a medical condition, and some of the conditions that have come up are diabetes, heart conditions, cancer, and maybe they're going through treatment. So before you rule anything else out, consider those options. Again, take a look at your handbook, see how they might be able to be applied. And then also you might want to consider some other options, right? Like request for time off. Do they have any vacation or PTO available that they can use? I know that if you were allow everyone to take their vacation time or PTO or to take sick time, it's possible that you would not be able to run your business by allowing everyone. So remember, you do have the ability to follow the guidelines from your handbook, which is why I reference at the end here is that use your handbook as a guide. Because even with vacation or PTO, if someone does not have a medical condition that keeps them from being at work, or if they do not qualify under the emergency FMLA or the paid sick rules, then I would definitely use the handbook. Most companies have a requirement where employees should request time off or vacation or PTO 15 days in advance, 10 days in advance, or 5 days in advance, whatever that is. Use that as your guide. So if you are able to provide them the time off, then you can provide that time off if they have vacation or PTO available. Now, if someone doesn't show up to work, they don't call you, they don't show up, then your policies in your handbook, you may also have a policy in your handbook about no call, no show. Typically, a policy says that if an employee does not show up to work for 3 consecutive days without calling or letting you know of their absence, then you can actually accept that as a resignation. So that is another option that you can use. But more than anything, right from the beginning, remember to address their safety concerns. Let them know that you are taking every precautionary measure necessary to ensure their safety and the safety of others. And now with the new regulations, it includes being able to provide masks to your employees. Are there gloves available? And then are you following the protocols of being 6 feet away? And that would ensure, that you are addressing their safety concerns. So you want to consider, do you have cubicles? Are the cubicles, do they have safety measures and separated by enough distance? Do they have the separation walls that protect people, from, from the virus flowing, directly between the 2 individuals? Those are things that you want to take into consideration. And with that, this ends the information that I have, but we do have plenty of time for answering your questions, and I'm happy to do that. I know that there were some questions that had come in the beginning, and so Saida, if you would like to just let me know what questions are available, and I'd be happy to answer them, or I'd be happy to clarify any of the items that we've reviewed so far.
Great, thank you, Carmen, for that. I'd like to mention too that this Zoom meeting is being recorded, and it can be sent to you upon request. Also, if you have any questions, there is a chat button. Make sure to send us any questions there, and I will read them out loud for Carmen to answer. So right now, we have a question. Can I hire new employees when laid off employees don't want to come back?
So can you hire new employees when laid off employees do not want to come back? Uh, yes, so remember the difference here is laid off. So if someone is laid off, then there is no obligation for them to come back to work with you. Now, if you furlough an employee, then in that case, they do have the right to not come back, because remember that California is an at-will state. Therefore, they do have the right not to come back. And what I would recommend in that situation is that now you follow it up with a separation notice. And this could potentially now be a resignation from the employee. So first, let's handle one piece of it, right? The first piece is the employee that does not want to come back. What you would want to ask is, are you resigning your employment? The answer should be yes, because they don't want to come back. And even if they say, no, I'm not, I'm just afraid to come back to work, say, well, the position is available for you to come back. If you refuse to return to work, then unfortunately, we do have to accept that as a resignation. And then you would follow up and send them the change in status notice, noting a resignation, the effective date, and you can put in the comment section that the employee was invited to return to work and did not want to return to work effective such and such date, and you accept the resignation. So then the second part is that, yes, you are able to hire someone else to take the replacement of that employee who is no longer working with you.
Great, perfect. Another question that came in is, if an employer is going to reduce exempt employee salary, do the reductions have to be the same for every exempt employee?
That is a very, very good question. So I would base the reductions for something like that, particularly for exempt or straight across the board, as you can consider a percentage. So for example, you can say everyone is going to be reduced by 25% in order for us to be able to maintain, the work for everyone. Now, keeping that in mind, what you want to do is make sure that no one falls under the minimum wage requirements. Remember, minimum wage for an hourly employee is going to be in the range of about the $15 range. And then remember that I mentioned earlier, the minimum wage for an exempt salary employee, you don't want it to go below the $54,000 threshold also. While I know the question was, can you reduce the different amounts? Yes, you can reduce a different amount. You can say, if there are two employees that are at $20 an hour and you want to reduce someone to $18, but another one to $15, then what you want to look at something like that is, why am I making that difference? And, why am I selecting the difference? And you may consider things like, how long they've been employed with you. So if they've been employed with you for a longer period of time, so tenure, is something that you're considering as part of the compensation reduction, then yes, you can do that. But again, it should be very, very clear as to what it is or what the reason is for making that change. I hope that answers the question.
Perfect. One other question that came in, can an employer test an employee for COVID-19?
Yes, so that is a question that, there's a battle between employers and attorneys also. Recently, I've been participating in quite a few webinars. Some attorneys are not recommending it. The reason they're not recommending it is because they don't know the consequence, of what that can bring later. However, there are some guidelines that you can use, particularly right now. I would never say, yes, go ahead and, take someone's temperature. And the way, and I think more than anything, it's, can you test an employee for COVID-19? So you probably as an employer will not have the testing, equipment, readily available, but you may send someone to be tested if you believe that there is a potential, that they may have, or that they show signs of COVID-19. And some of those signs, again, the very familiar ones are the dry cough, the fever, having a fever, and chills. There are a few new ones that, that have recently just been brought up. So you may send someone to be tested. However, employers may also, take temperature at your place of employment. Again, this is, a slippery slope here, but because of the current situation, it is in the best interest for the employer to also protect, the health environment of that individual, plus, of your other employees. So in that case, it can be, but I would have a very specific structure. I would definitely speak to an HR specialist and or an attorney to help you create the guidelines before you begin any kind of testing. I would definitely make sure to do that.
Carmen, this is Javier Rodriguez. Thank you.
Yes.
So one of the questions, well, first of all, yeah, there's a couple of questions on chat. I was going to once again encourage those that are on this call to type out your information on your chat, and then we'll do the best to field it. So one of the other scenarios that is happening is, as businesses are returning, when they return, some, for example, like a restaurant may return with a restriction from the state or their municipality only to have 50% capacity or 25% capacity. So obviously the workforce is going to be reduced, but also the income levels for that business is going to be reduced. Can they restructure salaries? I know we talked about it in terms of reducing, but on return, can they do a restructure based on the revenue decrease?
Yes, Javier. So they can, particularly if you hire, or actually if you lay someone off, then I definitely say that you are able to return employees back. So what you would do is you can rehire them depending on on how long they've been laid off. I typically recommend, you can rehire someone within 30 to 90 days. Some companies use 30 days, others use 90 days as their threshold. Again, choose the one that is the one that's going to work better for you. But upon doing so, you would actually need to inform the employee that they can be rehired, but either it's not to their same position, or it is the same position but at the new rate. And so you want to let them know in advance what that new rate will be.
Great. Okay, very good. Saida, I think we have a question from on the chat. You want to read that to Carmen?
Sorry, yes, we have a question from Mary. It says, if and when PPP loans get funded and employers are able to rehire employees, but employees don't want to come back because they are making more in unemployment than work, what can employers do?
That is a great question, Mary. So what I have come across is that first, if you do get funded through one of the programs and you are not able to return an employee to work who was previously laid off for the reason you specified, and it's true, some employees don't want to come back because they're making more money, perhaps on unemployment right now. That will change perhaps at the end of July when, some of these extra benefits end. So, what will happen with your funding is that you may not qualify for a forgiveness of that portion of the loan. That's going to be one thing. So you don't have to bring someone back. The other thing that you should probably consult with either your CPA or your banker is inquire about this. And I would take this step just as a precautionary measure, is that I would look to hire someone else so that you can still have the same number of employees that you had prior to the COVID-19 and that you listed on your application for your loan. That is my recommendation. But again, I do think it's important for you to contact and consult with your CPA or your banker to clarify that.
Great. Carmen, I don't know that we have any other questions, but if you do, if somebody has a question, please put it on the chat. In the interim, on the last slide that you have this download of the free, can we go back to that last slide?
Sure.
Um,
Oh, this one here, yes.
yeah, the information.
Yes.
Tell the audience, how they can get that information in their hands, because obviously this is kind of a tidbit. It's kind of the tip of the iceberg. Wonderful information, and I'm sure that there's so many other scenarios out there that employers need guidance.
Yes.
Maybe tell them about what you have here in terms of that download that you have on your screen.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks for mentioning that, Javier. So the HR guides are available to anyone who visits our webpage, and you can find that here as it's listed as myhrspecialist.com. And then you would just submit your email and your name to be able to download the guides. You can download the guides automatically, or if you're not able to download them, it'll send us an email, and you can let us know that that you want those guides, and then we'll send those over to you directly. And even if you just emailed us at info@myhrspecialist.com, and you just said, hey, can I get your free HR guides? We'll send them over to you, even if you don't go through the process of the website. Now, the guides are intended to help you make decisions about some of the needs that you may have in your place of work. So again, the first one, it's, the benefit of an employee handbook, why a handbook is important to your establishment. And the main reason is that it helps you to have a very clear understanding and communication between you and your employees. It's also a really great tool for your managers and anyone who handles employee matters to be able to reference and to be able to give a fair assessment of needs with your employees, and whether that be around attendance issues or how to handle benefit requests. So it's a great guide to use. And then the second one, to pay or not to pay, right? Interns, to pay or not to pay. This one is very popular, particularly with nonprofits and other companies who sometimes say, oh, I'm just going to hire or bring on an intern to help me with this. But this guide is very critical. It helps you determine whether or not you actually qualify as an employer to have an intern, and whether that internship needs to be paid or unpaid. So I recommend that to anyone who has internship opportunities or who is considering internship opportunities for your place of employment. And the third one is definitely the most critical one. And actually, we've been making changes to this one regularly. Right now, it does require another update because, as most of you may know, that with the AB5 and the requirements, about whether or not having independent contractors in the workplace is compliant. There's just so many changes. So what I recommend as a result to that is that if you do need to make a decision about your independent contractors, email us directly, and we'd be happy to provide you the details on who qualifies to be an independent contractor and who does not. One of the things that we've noticed right now, with these recent changes, is if you have independent contractors and you're not able to use them right now. And then obviously, Mary asked a really good question earlier about the PPP. That program is really intended for employees only. So if you have independent contractors that also depend on payments from you, they may be going to unemployment office or to EDD website and filing and possibly open up a can of worms, if they believe that they are being misclassified. So this is a very, very critical one. And this is a whole webinar in itself too, Javier.
Right.
There's so much detail about it. But if someone needs, some immediate support with that, please feel free to reach out to us. and we are happy to provide you the information that you need to help you make the best decisions right now.
Great, Carmen. We have two questions that came in.
Okay.
One is, I heard a CPA recommend reporting these employees that do not want to come back to work to EDD unemployment, and benefits will be cut off. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think that we have to be fair, right? And, you know, they're receiving a benefit that, you know, that is they're entitled to as a result of COVID-19. But if you have work for them, then what you do, there are forms that you can complete. And I think that it is something that you should do. As an employer, we should also take advantage of the benefits that are available to us. And not only that, but that would be one sort of documentation that could be used, you know, if you do receive the PPP, and you know, that way it shows proof, because remember, you have to show proof of everything. So that would show proof that someone did not want to return to work, or that, you know, that they resigned, and then that you had to hire a new person. So I would definitely use that as a support for your business needs.
Great. One question also came in. Any thoughts or update on upcoming CalSavers retirement access deadline? June 30th for employees of 100 plus.
Let me do this. Let me see if I can bring that up right now. And if I'm not able to, what I'll do is I will send you some information, Javier, so that you can follow up to everyone with everyone. But the truth is, you know, as it relates to like the 401k, it's not an area that I specialize in. So I do try to refrain from providing any feedback on that. But I'd be happy to connect you to, you know, someone that would be able to support you with these retirement savings plan questions.
Great. So that pretty much concludes the Q&A. If anyone has any questions, they can feel free to email me, and we will get back to you answering any questions that you have. Javier, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, we want to thank everybody, those that participated today, and definitely thank you, Carmen. You did a wonderful job as always.
Thank you.
Very informative, and I'm sure there's a lot of other questions, but I really encourage those that are listening to take Carmen's information, the email information out there that she has, and take advantage of those free downloads. I'm going to send mine in right away. It caught my eye. And she does a great job with our clients, very hands-on. And I think that's what is really needed in today's environment. Thank you, Carmen. And once again, just as closing, if anybody is interested in this meeting, please contact our office and we can send you the actual recording in its entirety through Zoom that you can go over again and you know, take notes and get a little bit of glean more information of what Carmen said. Once again, Carmen, thank you so much for your time and your expertise. I want to thank Saida. Thank you, Saida, for putting this together and just kind of being the quarterback there for your help. And thank you for those that participated for participating in this. We're in this together. I think, you know, again, as that a lot of people are worried. I want to close with this. A famous theologian in many years ago said this. He said, anxiety is the end of faith. True faith is the end of anxiety. So in that, we have to have faith no matter what we're going through during this time. Faith is what's going to get us through. After every storm, there's always a shining light, or what they call a silver lining. And I think that we're going through a period, we'll learn a lot, but we will come out better at the end. So with that, everyone have a wonderful rest of the afternoon and a great weekend. Check if the beaches are open, it's still debatable. I think that they're debating, but maybe interesting times this weekend. Once again, thank you again. Thanks, Carmen.
Thank you very much.
Okay, bye for now.
Bye-bye.